Greetings. It's great to have you with me as we learn to paint with watercolor. The first thing I'd like us to practice together is a flat wash. When you paint a wall in your bedroom, you're trying to make it consistent and cover the whole wall in a sort of even way. That's what a flat wash is all about. Okay, I'm going to be using some 140-pound watercolor paper that I have torn off of a large pad. So in keeping with our strategy that we're going to work smaller, make more practice tries at it, get comfortable with it before we risk a big sheet of paper, you might start collecting a series of small sheets of your practice and even take some notes on it so that you can have a kind of visual journal. This is going to be a wash of paint, which is what we do with watercolor paint, where we spread color across the surface. And most of you have tried that before, where you've gone to the paint shop, got yourself a gallon of paint, and suddenly changed the color of your bedroom or whatever. This is the closest equivalent to that. The thing that gets people in trouble with watercolor is they think like that, oh, I'm going to just take paint and smear it onto the wall. But watercolor requires a little more finesse, and it requires that use of water to make the pigment or the color move and blend. So let's talk about how we can do that with a whole section of a piece of paper, a whole shape. I've gone ahead and drawn a rectangle that I'm going to fill in with some color, and I'm using my ultramarine blue. I have my little squirted out amount of pigment on my plate, and now I'm just making that puddle again. I'm using some water with the bristles of my 1-inch flat brush, tipping the corner of those bristles up into the pigment and then bringing it down into my puddle till it's nice and creamy. This time I've got a fairly big shape there to fill in, so I want a pretty good puddle. I want to have some pigment to draw from as I go along. So I've dipped back into my water, come back over to my pigment until I have a pretty good puddle of creamy melted butter consistency pigment. Okay, here we go. I have a brush now that's loaded. It's a flat 1-inch brush. It's got pigment throughout all the bristles, and it also has water. I'm going to make my first pass, just like we did practices on newsprint, and I'm just going to go across the top of that rectangle and lift up my brush at the end. Now, while that's still wet, if you have a tipped board, if your board is tipped, or you tip your paper, you'll let gravity kind of bring that pigment down to the bottom of that stroke. That means that now there's a little bit more pigment, almost I can see a bead of it along this bottom edge of my stroke. I want to overlap my next stroke so I can pick up that bead. I'll go back to my palette and come back, and now look, I'm going to overlap over that little bead of pigment and take that one across my shape. There should be some blending going on there. Over here where my stroke was getting more dry, it's not blending quite as well. This really needs to be done fairly quickly, and if you practice this a few times at home, you'll get quicker and quicker at it, and your quickest one will probably be your best one. I go back each stroke and I reload. So I need to do that fairly quickly. And again, I'm keeping that paper kind of slanted so gravity is my friend right now. It's helping to keep that pigment coming downward so that I can pick it up with my next stroke. And there we have it, a flat wash. I'm going to let that dry. My goal is to have the pigment be about the same thickness, the same consistency, the same darkness, the same amount of blue. I want that to look pretty similar, as if I just painted the wall of my bedroom, and I want it to look consistent. So there you have it, a flat wash. You can never really get enough practice with that, but it's time for us to move on to our next challenge, the graded wash. Hi, I'm Bob. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you'll go by my website at watercolorwithbob.com. That's where you'll find an interactive outline of the whole course. You can also share your work with me and your fellow students. One thing I really love about watercolor is how accessible it is. That's why I realized it was important to me to put this course out for free. That said, it would mean the world to me if you would support this work. You can like it, you could share it with your friends, you could subscribe to the channel, you could also visit the gift shop or even make a donation. Thanks so much. See you on the next lesson, and happy painting. Take some notes. Take some notes. You're a scientist.